So let us begin today with chapter 4 of Gulliver's Travels, part 2, chapter 4 of Gulliver's Travels, better to say, Voyage to Brobdingnag. This chapter can be titled, though there is no title present over here, you can title this chapter as Lorbrulgrud, the Metropolis, Lorbrulgrud. Okay, why? Because in this chapter, what we will see, in this chapter, this country will be described. Okay, this country will be described, and also there will be some proposals for correcting the modern maps and everything. Besides, there will be the description of the king's palace, and there will be a detailed description of the metropolis, as I told you just now, and along with it, the author's traveling will be described, and the chief temple of this place, of this area, is described over here. This is the format of this chapter. This chapter is mainly based on description. Okay, this chapter is mainly based on description, and between chapter 3 and chapter 5, or from chapter 3 to chapter 5, we see that there is a continuous satire of the European culture. Okay, or if you look into the chapter details, you will see that there is this constant satire of the European culture. Even in chapter 5 you will see that, and there are also most entertaining portions of the novel, because it showcases how in previous class or previous chapter, what you have seen in previous chapter, you have seen how the clown or the dwarf is weak, how the dwarf who is weak in their society, or the lowest section, belongs to the lowest section of the society, is jealous of Gulliver being so minute in size. Okay, so these in these places, what we will see, Gulliver is treated like a doll. Okay, tormented by the court, especially the court dwarf, and briefly adopted by a monkey. Okay, these scenes serve to hammer home the images of Gulliver's minuscule size. Okay, how Gulliver is becoming a person who is least powerful, that is being showcased over here, where a dwarf, where a monkey can easily be taking it for its own. Okay, so this shows how things can change within a span of a chapter, okay, or a travel. It depends on where you are, যে তোমার কি হতে চাইছে. Okay, so this chapter begins with Gulliver saying that he intends to give the readers a short description of this country. Okay, so far he has traveled, he wants to give a short description of this area. He says that Lorbrulgrud stands upon almost two equal parts on each side of the river that passes through. ওকে, এই এরিয়াটাকে অলমোস্ট হচ্ছে দুটো ইকুয়াল ভাগে ভাগ করা হয়ে গেছে, রিভার মাঝখান থেকে চলে গেছে, অ্যান্ড দ্য কিংস প্যালেস ইজ no regular edifice but a heap of buildings about 7 miles around. The chief rooms are generally 240 feet high and broad and long in proportion to a large extent. Okay, along with it, a coach was allowed to Glumdalclitch and Gulliver, where her governess, that is Gulliver's governess, frequently took her governess, here is Glumdalclitch's governess, frequently took her out to see the town or go among the shops and everything. Okay, and Gulliver was always of the party. um, he was there and was carried in his box. Okay, so although the girl uh, was at Gulliver's own desire, would take him out and hold in her hand, and Gulliver might more conveniently view the houses and the people and as they passed along the street. But what we find here is that we see that Gulliver is in a cage. Okay, so being an European, being a person who would look down on others, who would be the most powerful person, যে অন্যর উপর হচ্ছে সে পাওয়ারফুল করবে, অন্যদেরকে কেজে রাখা তার স্বভাব রয়েছে, স্লেভ ট্রেড করবে, সে স্লেভ বানিয়ে রাখে অন্যদেরকে, এটা একটা টেন্ডেন্সি থাকে তাদের। কিন্তু নাও what we find, he has become the slave. Okay, he has become the doll. ক্লিয়ার, সে কি, সে হচ্ছে এখানটায় পাওয়ারলেস, সেটা দেখাচ্ছে। ক্লিয়ার, এইখানটায় তোদের সেই জিনিসগুলোই হচ্ছে বলা, সেই জিনিসগুলোই হচ্ছে দেখানোর। এই যে কাণ্ড কারখানাগুলো সেইগুলোই হচ্ছে এখানটায় দেখাচ্ছে। ঠিক আছে, একদিন কি হয়েছে, যখন গভর্নেস অর্ডার্ড দ্য কোচম্যান টু স্টপ অ্যাট সেভারাল শপস, যেখানটা বেগার্সরা হচ্ছে তাদের অপরচুনিটি দিচ্ছিল টু দ্য সাইডস অফ দ্য কোচ, অ্যান্ড দে গেভ Gulliver the most horrible spectacles. And this is quite significant because Europeans are not looked down upon. The thing I just said now. Okay, so what we find here is that the Europeans are the people who used to look down upon others, right? তারা হচ্ছে অন্যদের উপর লুক ডাউন করে, তাদেরকে ছোট করে দেখে। But here the beggars of the street, they have these horrible spectacles. They are looking at an European in this manner. Okay, so he has not faced this kind of attitude. Okay, where every European were in every place of the earth, they have faced admiration. Every European had faced admiration only. But here they are treating Gulliver, they are treating an European in a way where we get to see that this person is of least importance. Okay, and what we find here is that in spite of those things, in spite of these descriptions, Glumdalclitch is not giving away Gulliver. Okay, there was a woman among the beggars. There was a woman with a cancer in her breast, swelled to a monstrous size, full of holes, in 2 or 3 of which Gulliver could have easily crept in. Okay, so showing that how the size matters, how big they are, okay, how powerful they are. And besides, what we find, besides the large box in which Gulliver was usually carried, the queen had also ordered a small one to be made for Gulliver. Okay, for about 12 foot square and 10 feet high, for the convenience of traveling, because the other box that was there, that was way too large for Glumdalclitch's lap, and it was also cumbersome in the coach. So what we find here is that in spite of Gulliver being an alien over here, alien to the culture, these people are treating Gulliver in the most beneficial way they can do. Okay, so what we find here is that the Europeans do not treat the others. European do not or had not treated the lowest sections of the society, or even the people who do not consider European, or who are black, okay, or who are completely opposite to their culture, in this way. Europeans had, better to say, they had treated them in the most oppressive way, right? So what we find here is that he is being put on a cage. This Gulliver is put on a cage, it is right, but at the same time they are also looking at the convenience, they are also looking at his well-being, which the Europeans never did for the slaves. Okay, and what we find here is that you can also interpret this from the perspective of animals, keeping pets. We actually tend to, or any person would actually tend to take care of the pets. They actually do. But what we find here is that in spite of doing so, in spite of taking care of those people, what we find, in spite of taking care, we do not see them getting the same status. Okay, obviously Gulliver is not getting the same status as other people would, but he is in a more convenient position in this place, right? So the best things are provided for him. And also what we find is that you might say that the small cage is for convenience of Glumdalclitch to clutch, রাইট, গ্লামডালক্লিচ যাতে হচ্ছে ভালো করে হচ্ছে সেটাকে ধরতে পারে তার জন্য রেখেছে। বাট অ্যাট দ্য সেম টাইম গ্লামডালক্লিচ যদি হচ্ছে কনভিনিয়েন্ট না হয় তাহলে গালিভারও কিন্তু কনভিনিয়েন্ট হবে না। ওকে, if Glumdalclitch is not able to carry the cage properly, then Gulliver will also not be able to be comfortable enough, right? So what we find here is that though he is in a cave, his existence in a more comfortable way is looked at. Okay, so it was made by the same artist whom Gulliver had directed the whole contrivance. Okay, in the journeys when Gulliver was weary of the coach, a servant on horseback would buckle his box and place it on a cushion before him, and there he had a full prospect of the country on the three sides from the three windows of the cage. Okay, so what we find here is that his benefits, his comfortness is looked at. It is quite opposite to the treatment of the slaves. It is quite opposite to the treatment of the slaves in the European countries. Okay, he is a slave over there, he has been bought. Okay, গালিভারকে কেনা হয়েছে ওখানটায় তার অ্যামিউজমেন্টের জন্য। But what we find here is that the treatment that he is getting is completely opposite to what Europeans do. Okay, so his benefit or his existence in a comfortable state is kept in mind even during journeys. Okay, so a king or a queen who is of such power, they could have easily done away with Gulliver in their own way. তাকে কেউ কোয়েশ্চেন করারও ছিল না, right? There was no one to question his or her actions, queen or king's actions. But what we find? We find that she, the queen, is a generous person, and she actually cares about the not the, actually cares about Gulliver or the property that she has. Okay, so she is treating Gulliver as a doll, she is treating Gulliver as a property and an endeared property. Okay, the property which is not to be sold, which is not to be used. Okay, it is a property which amuses the king. It is a property which can actually give satisfaction to the queen. Okay, mental satisfaction of keeping in possession an exquisite thing. Okay, a thing which is not easily available, সেই একটা অ্যান্টিক জিনিস, ঠিক আছে, একটা রেয়ার জিনিস তাদের কাছে আছে, a rare thing is in their possession, and more to that they are taking care of it because of that. Clear? So that is being dealt with, that is being described here, and this description goes on. So he was very desirous to also see the chief temple, particularly the tower belonging to it, which is reckoned the highest in the kingdom. Accordingly, one day the Nards carried him there, but Gulliver may truly say that he was very disappointed, for the height is not above 3,000 feet. Okay, but it must be allowed that whatever this famous tower wants in height is ample made in beauty and strength. So what we find here is that he is now getting acquainted with the things that are happening or that were there. Okay, there is this clear description of several other things where soon began to be known and esteemed among the greatest officers. Okay, he was known to the officers. He had full prospect of the country on the three sides through the windows. Okay, and more to say that he was disappointed to see the temple, which is not of that height. Okay, it is only 3,000 feet. Okay, so which allowing for the difference between the size of those people as in Europe, okay, is of no great matter of admiration. Also, what we find here is that this famous tower, which has its height and ample made in its beauty and its strength, but in spite of that, he is not that much in a sense, he is not that much affected by the beauty or the strength of that area. Okay, he measured a little finger which had fallen down from one of the statues there was and lay unperceived among the rubbishes. Okay, so what we find here is that it was exactly 4 feet, an inch in length, and for him it appeared that this was not that much great. Okay, so accordingly he had thought, he had guessed, he had wished that it would be such a magnificent structure. It is beautiful for him to say, but he was not that much mesmerized. Okay, why? Because of the size of the people, the difference in the size of the people in Europe, and the towers are of great number, of great size, because the difference between the size of the people and here is huge. People of Europe and the people of Brobdingnag, the size is huge. So he had expected that the size of the towers will be of such a great length which he could not be able to understand, or which he could not be able to decipher. Okay, but what he found out here is that it is only somewhat 3,000 feet, and 3,000 feet is nothing to be calculated, nothing difficult to be calculated. Okay, so the king's seldom keeps above 600 horses in his stables. He describes that, and generally there are about 54 or 60 feet high, the horses. Okay, the horses are 54 to 60 feet high. But when he goes on solemn days, he is attended for state by a military guard of 500 horses, which indeed Gulliver thought was a most splendid sight that he could be ever beheld, until he saw the part of his army in Battalia, where he shall find another occasion where he will speak. Okay, so in every case, in every situation, what I find here is that Swift's point is that he is smoothly describing the state, he is smoothly describing the activities he is doing, but in spite of the magnificence, in spite of the greater lengths, greater heights that these people have, the most magnificent thing that they have is that they are persons who would like to take care of their prized possessions. Okay, it is not like humans who would be doing away with things. Clear? So any kind of thing that they have, that would be looked after. His pleasure is looked after. Gulliver's pleasure is looked after, and it is the most important thing for him. Okay, he could have been mishandled as he was mishandled in the farmer's house. But what we find here is that this palace, this royalty, is quite different from others, from several other places where the royalty is filled with autocracy, where the royalty is filled with audacity. But here they are, in a way, they are dealing with things in a way which would benefit the alien over here, that is Gulliver. Okay, his comfort is of most importance. তার কি করে ভালো থাকে সেইটা দেখাচ্ছে, and it showcases the satirizing of the European traditions. Okay, European tradition always consider that they are the great. Okay, they can be the most powerful, they can do anything, they are all powerful and they can control everything. Clear? But what we find here is that this European tradition, this Europeanness, better to say, what we see here is that they are becoming dwarf, they are becoming less importance over here, they are being looked down upon. তাদের পাওয়ারটা হচ্ছে এখানটায় ল্যাক করছে, তাদের হচ্ছে এই যে ক্ষমতাগুলো সেইগুলো হচ্ছে এখানটায় এসে হারিয়ে যাচ্ছে. Clear? So what we find here is that this existence of European culture within Brobdingnagian culture is completely opposite. He can relate what his culture is lacking, what European culture is lacking, সেগুলো দেখাচ্ছে. Clear? So the description is more like they are not just greater in height, but they are greater in their mindset. Clear? So this is more or less the main topic. Okay, main topic of this chapter. And obviously, as I told in the very first few lines, I have said that the Gulliver's extreme minuscule size, okay, is hammered over here. This image of Gulliver being of very minute size is being hammered over here, is being imposed over here. Why? Because in order to show because Gulliver is a representative of the European world or the European culture, right? So it tries to, this chapter, by constantly showing how small he is, how small Gulliver is. It constantly shows in comparison to the bigger box, then in comparison to the smaller box, then in comparison to the governess Glumdalclich's problem in catching the or holding the cage, or even his traveling, due to his traveling he is facing problem. And in everything what we find here is that in everything it is emphasized constantly that how minute his size is, কতটা সে মাইনিউট সাইজে সেটাই বারবার করে দেখানো হয়েছে, সেটাই দেখানো হচ্ছে। অ্যান্ড তার ফলে কি, তার ফলে হচ্ছে অ্যাজ হি ইজ এ রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ অফ দ্য ইউরোপিয়ান ওয়ার্ল্ড, it showcases how minute or how small this European culture is, who actually think themselves to be the greatest. European culture to mone kore they are the greatest, they can control the world, they can rule the world. But unfortunately this in comparison to this culture they are nothing, they are looked down upon. তাদের কোনো ক্ষমতাই নেই বলতে গেলে, ক্লিয়ার? তাদেরকে ইজিলি হচ্ছে কি করা যায়, তাদেরকে ইজিলি হচ্ছে অ্যাকচুয়ালি তাদেরকে টিপে মেরে ফেলা যায়, দে ক্যান বি ইজিলি ডেস্ট্রয়েড, বাট দে আর নট ইন দিস প্লেস। তাদেরকে উল্টে যাতে তারা ভালো থাকতে পারে সেই চেষ্টাটা করা হচ্ছে, তার কমফর্টটা দেখা হচ্ছে। whereas ইউরোপিয়ান পিপল যখন কোনো এলিয়েন আসে, ধর কিং কং বা যে কোনো কিছু, যাদেরকে ক্যাপটিভ করা হয়, ফিল্মে দেখেছিস, তাদেরকে কী করা হয়, তাদেরকে টর্চার করা হয়, তাদেরকে ইউজ করা হয়। গালিভারকেও এখানটা ইউজ করেছে ওই ফার্মারটা তার নিয়ে বেনিফিটের জন্যে, বাট সেখানটাই হচ্ছে ইউরোপিয়ান কালচারের সাথে মিল দেখানো হয়েছে। বাট whereas কিং কুইন তাদের এখানটায় কি, তাদের এখানটায় দেখানো হচ্ছে দে আর মোর জেনারাস, দে আর মোর কেয়ারফুল ইন ট্রিটিং অর লুকিং আফটার গালিভার। ওকে, সেটাই হচ্ছে এখানটায় বলার, সেটাই হচ্ছে এখানটায় দেখানোর চেষ্টা করছে। ইনস্পাইট অফ হি বিং অফ or holding the least power, Gulliver holding, in spite of Gulliver holding the least power, what we get that this person is actually able to discuss or project how European society is lacking in culture. ওকে, ইউরোপিয়ান সোসাইটি কী করে হচ্ছে অন্যদের কালচারকে ছোট করছে, সেই ছোট করতে গিয়ে সে কী করছে, সে ছোট করতে গিয়ে সে অন্যদের কালচারকে ছোট করতে গিয়ে সে কী করছে, সে হচ্ছে আমাদের বলতে সে নিজেদেরকেই হচ্ছে ছোট করে দিচ্ছে। ক্লিয়ার? So this is it. This is chapter 4. I hope you have understood. Very simple chapter. Okay, let's end it here.